Today we're visiting the Petrie Museum. It's a small, often unvisited museum, a few streets from Euston to the north and the British Museum to the south. It hosts some 80,000 items from ancient Egypt and Sudan in particular. It's actually part of University College London, hidden away. You see here there's water stones on the corner. University College London's around you. Between the gates here, you walk down an old mews, and it's actually an old horse stables. But it's a beautiful little museum and holds a special place in my heart. The museum was actually founded by Amelia Edwards, who had been a very heavy supporter of archaeology and particularly archaeological digs in terms of fundraising and popularising them. And she'd worked a lot with William Flinders Petrie. William Flinders Petrie is one of the fathers of archaeology. If you hear of Beaker people, it was him who basically looked at pottery shards and said, well, before carbon dating, how do you tell how old an archaeological site is? You can look at the type of clay, the way it's being fired, the styling, and you can identify its place within the historical strata. So when Amelia died and she left her collection, she was wondering where to leave it. University College London was at the time, I believe, the only university in Britain, certainly in London, where women were allowed to graduate. So she decided that she'd leave her collection to UCL. And although she didn't say it has to be run by Petrie, the terms of her will required that the museum's curator had worked at certain digs in both Egypt and Sudan, and effectively meant it had to be Petrie. So Petrie took over as the first curator, and he expanded the collection. And it really is a world-class selection. It's a very small museum, so this is not going to be a long video, but I'm just going to walk through a few of the items. You can see it's very tightly packed, and it's quite hard to really record or photograph the immense collection here. On the left you have these beautiful beads made of glass and polished rock, and on the right there's a lovely collection of small pieces from various digs, and in other cabinets on the walls there's a lot of sections and pieces of figurines, very good examples of hieroglyphics. And there's Petrie on the left and Amelia on the right. There's a lot of prehistoric pieces there. I'll move fairly swiftly through. You really can't see all the little details, but there's beautiful examples of little gods and figurines, through to hunting tools, to household implements, to round the corner's beautiful collection of shabti. And there's a few very, very special items in this museum, but really it's an academic museum. It's a series of examples of works found. So here you see from Ptolemaic Egypt, those were the fronts to the burial mask. So instead of having a big burial mask, you'd mummify the body. They'd be put encased within a coffin, and then the face would be painted on in those examples, as opposed to the ones where you see them carved with the facial features, which tended to be earlier. It was a sort of merger of Greco-Roman with Egyptian after Mark Antony and Cleopatra. Here's some very beautiful examples of stone carving. A lot of hieroglyphics and fairly well labelled items. I didn't dwell too much on these because really you have to go through it and consume the items you're interested in. I'd say there's probably 4 really must-see items in this small museum, and the museum is only 2 rooms. And you see here the various inscriptions and stelae that have been raised up. Some still with the paint on there. What you can also see as I go around is how few people are in this museum. I think in the time I was here, there were maybe 6 or 8 guests, and there was a student polishing the glass. I'm afraid she polished it a bit too well. There's a lot of reflections. But really, as I often say, this isn't to photograph every item in the museum. This is a feel for what you will see. And down this end of the museum, there's an interesting collection of pottery. You see the little figurines on the other side there. It's beautiful with some knives, combs made of wood and ivory, a lot of necklaces and decorations, bracelets. Also here's some beautiful examples of the blue lattice. A lot of pot shards. I did tell you, Petrie dated things by pots, shards. And here again, as we saw earlier, the painted Ptolemaic era, these are slightly earlier examples. And you see the more familiar carved coffins. Although I would say these are late Kingdom, I believe. Another down there. Some fascinating gods. I don't think I captured it. There's a beautiful little figure of Bess, and it's a vase which really has a liquid container. You can see there the ankh on the other side. Here, items for the afterlife. You're buried, you need to take with you your servants, so you've got shabtis for each of those. But then you need to have figures of the animals that they're going to feed you with, the plates they're going to feed you on, the tables they're going to lay that on. So it's almost like a doll's house as a metaphor for the items you're going to take with you. Now here, this is one of the great items here. It is a real body and it is a real burial. It is a early kingdom pot burial, I believe pre-dynastic. And here you have some items from the pyramids themselves. And next to it, I love this collection of shabtis. It's a very good collection of, what is it, like 70 or 80 different shabtis. And in a burial, you would have these different sized figures, for different roles. And there's a good explanation in there as well. It's not a museum that's big enough to have a lot of kind of exhibitions expounding how things happened, but it's very good at examples with labels. Now here, if you've seen the film The Mummy, you've seen fabric inspired by this. This is the oldest fabric garment in the world. It dates to at least 3100 BC. And this section is an excellent collection of different styles of pots. So going back to, you have it by burial and by town that it was dug at. And you can see the specific styles from the different eras. You can see how each burial in its time and place had a very different style. So here you got pre-dynastic from Amarna, pre-dynastic from Nakada. So that's what, 3000 BC? Maybe this is a museum which is a little bit more for the history geek. It's the sort of university collection that students of archaeology can study specific examples of an obscure style so that they can recognise the similarities when they see it. And largely that's what this collection is for. It is a working museum in the sense that it's part of the archaeology department. It's run by the University College London, and it's staffed by primarily their students, which has the advantage that you have passionate, pretty knowledgeable students of all ages who are actually there and present, and sharing whatever love you have of historic items. They're sure to share at least as much. And this is an interesting outfit here. It's sort of hard to actually tell. Is it a dress? Was it with other decoration? But it sat probably over robes. And here, these are later pieces. I believe this side is Sudan and Middle Kingdom. And a lot of this material is the stuff that you wouldn't see on the wall in the British Museum. It's not grand enough. But this is the everyday archaeology. And I think it's one of the things that really makes the Petrie collection quite special. You see the lovely canopic jar up there. So if you think history is boring, this probably isn't a museum for you. If you're fascinated by ancient items, it definitely is. But it's a museum with a lot of passion for antiquity. It actually was saved by, I believe, one of the students during the war, because a lot of items were recovered from here and moved away. You see there these beautiful combs. And you see there hair combs that are 2,500, 3,000 years old. Small ampules for liquid. Larger vases. And you can see the Grecian style to some of those amphora, along with less Egyptian, bit more Sudanese style on that best there. And here very much more rough and ready designs. It's very hard to digest on video because there's just so much content. Some of these items that look insignificant on the video are actually very interesting to look at. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because we're going to be doing the British Museum in a few weeks. So if you got to the end of this video, you'll definitely enjoy that two-parter. In the meantime, if you're in London, I would 100% recommend the Petrie Museum if you're interested in ancient history. Do check opening times, because sometimes it's not open till the afternoon, and it is not open 7 days a week.